Welcome to American Christian or Christian American once again. If you hit that subscribe button and also the like, it will help get my videos out there. We're going to look at two video clips today. One is a little bit longer and the other one's not too long. But we're talking about the Central Park Five. If you're not familiar with them, you're going to become familiar with them. They are a huge publicized, wrongfully imprisoned case, but really it is not unusual. A lot of this stuff in different degrees happens all the time. It may not be for the same subject, but our prison systems are actually brutal, and they are a different way of slavery. And we're going to discuss more of this in upcoming videos. But right now, I want you to understand the brutality that went on. And there's a movie, and it talks about that. You should check it out on Netflix. But it just shows just how brutal our prison system is. Our prison system is really a way of torture. It doesn't rehabilitate anybody. Why we do need a form of restitution, and we need a form of consequences for people who commit crimes, we do not need to dehumanize them. But that has been our mindset in this country since its inception. We have had the mindset of dehumanizing and degrading people, murdering people, enslaving people, and people have had to face constant injustice in this country. There are other countries that do things different and get better results. This is not being a Christian to torture somebody or to hope that they get tortured. In fact, our prison systems do more harm than they do good. They actually create new criminals, and they also create traumatized people. This is dealing with African Americans, Latinos, which is the prime problem we've got, but whites go through some of this too, but not in the same degrees. They don't easily get put in prison like African Americans, Latinos do. But I'm advocating that nobody should have to go through it no matter what in any of our prisons whatsoever. Now, our prison systems are also, and this is something I'll discuss farther, they're actually part of big corporations utilize them to make cheap labor. But that's something I'll deal with in another episode. Right now, we're talking about people who are actually brutalized. And in this case, these were teenage boys. They were convicted for crimes that they didn't commit. In fact, they were coerced into blaming each other when they didn't even know each other. Only two of them knew each other. But this is what our country does. And you think about it, African Americans in this country have had to face trauma that is hereditary. What do I mean by that? Well, one of the things that's discovered is that trauma can be passed down from generation to generation. Because if your parent has suffered major traumatic events, how they raise you, what they teach you, how they behave around you, can pass that trauma on to the next person. If they have low self-esteem, if they have this, whatever else, however they behave, the next generation will carry that out unless the cycle is broken. And there is still going on in this country, is a trauma of slavery that has been carried down, certain things that continue to be perpetuated. For instance, we talked about the idea of Willie Lynch-Later. We talked about how to keep your slaves under control, and that was through divide the dark between the light, the young and the old, make them be adversaries to one another. It's still true today that a darker skinned person may feel inferior to a lighter skinned person. If they get married, there may be problems there because of that, because it has been so ingrained into the culture, into people throughout their lives. There's a mistrust that goes along amongst African Americans, which has been created by Willie Lynch-Later, the slavery that goes on. So now, on top of all the things that have been perpetuated from slavery, you have ongoing racism that goes on with segregation, lack of jobs, all these other things that go on, and plus new traumas being put on these people again and again and again. And then now you get people who were put in prison to put more trauma on their lives. It is no wonder that there are so many problems. But this is done only because, one, racism, easy targets, financial gain. These Central Park 5 individuals, the cops involved were disgusting. They shouldn't be employed by any police force whatsoever. The head woman in it made profit off of books that she wrote about police force. She wouldn't retract anything after they're exonerated. This is disgusting. But they're easy targets. Who cares about them? I'm making good money. That's what this country does to people. I hope you're one of those people who says, no, that's not right. That's not how it should be. And if you're particularly trying to please God as a Christian, you really should be upset, because this is what people do, and this is what Christian nationalism does. It doesn't care about people. It doesn't care about pleasing God. It cares about their greed and their power. And racism is at the top of the list. So watch this video. I know it's going to take a few minutes, but please stay with it. This is so important.
"30 years ago, the case of the Central Park Five shook New York City to its core. Today, it stands as a cautionary tale of injustice, as Maurice Dubois explains."
Kevin Richardson, 44 years old.
Corey Wise.
Raymond Santana.
Yusuf Salam, 45 years old.
Antron McCray.
5 men, connected in a way few of us could ever imagine. Is there a day or a week or a month that goes by when you don't think about the whole episode that brought you together?
It's every day, constantly.
Probably my second or third thought.
Even our conversations is different. It's not normal. Our conversation would be about prison, how we had to survive in prison.
You've just met the Central Park 5, a name they came to share 30 years ago after a young white woman named Trisha Miley went for a jog in New York's Central Park.
It was a brutal attack on a 28-year-old woman jogger.
She was dragged down the bushes where she was beaten and sexually assaulted.
The attack was an outrage and became a media sensation. Investigators quickly focused on a group of Black and Hispanic boys who were in the park that night.
Police say the gang of attackers was actually just half of a wolf pack of some 33 kids that committed some 7 other muggings earlier that night.
We are announcing the arrests of 4 males, all between 14 and 15 years of age.
Let him through.
Eventually, the 5 teenagers were tried, convicted, and imprisoned for the crime they maintained they did not do.
All we need is for one to tie this whole thing together.
The story of how the boys were charged and years later cleared of that notorious crime is the subject of a new Netflix miniseries by the Oscar-nominated writer-director Ava DuVernay. What was your starting point for this story?
My goal was to humanize boys and now men who are widely regarded as criminals. And in doing that, to invite the audience to reinterrogate everyone that they define as a criminal.
The series is called When They See Us, and DuVernay contends that what is seen all too often in criminal cases is race.
I'm asking the question to everyone, what do you see when you see Black boys? And that's a painful answer, because I know what the answer is for many people. It's exactly what these boys were called: wolf pack, animals, criminals. So much so that they could be tossed aside on a case that was made from a complete lie.
Kevin, Antron, and Raymond saw you messing around with the lady.
Who said that?
In the series, as in life, only 2 of the 5 teenagers even knew each other. But during interrogation, they say police coerced them to create stories implicating one another.
Who are you talking about? The lady in the park. I didn't see a lady or hit anyone.
Raymond saw you hit her!
Who's Raymond?
The men who lived through it say the reality was even worse.
Soon as we get in, they separate us and they start working on us. And I'm hearing Corey being physically beaten in the next room. And I'm immediately beyond afraid.
At the time, my mom, she suffered from a stroke. She had diabetes, and she left. And that was their time to get on me.
And what happened?
What didn't happen?
We're 14, 15, and 16-year-old kids. Never been in trouble with the law, never had no police contact. These are seasoned veterans. This fight was fixed.
I just kept telling the truth at first. They asked to speak to my father. My father left the room with them, came back in the room, he just changed. Cursing, yelling at me. And he said, tell these people what they want to hear so you go home. I was like, Dad, but I ain't do anything. The police yelling at me, father yelling at me. And I just like, all right, I did it. And I looked up to my father. He was my hero. But he gave up on me. He knew I was telling the truth. He just told me to lie.
Did you ever make peace with your father?
No. Didn't want to. My life is ruined. Why should I? He's a coward.
Let me tell you right now, Corey, okay? This is very, very serious.
None of the 5 ever admitted to committing the rape, but they did confess to being there.
You know that other people say that you did.
I know I did.
They blamed each other, damning admissions, even in the absence of physical evidence.
No blood on their clothing. The semen doesn't match. The DNA tests come back negative. There's nothing that links these boys to the crime.
All were found guilty. 4 of the 5 served about 7-year sentences as juveniles, refusing early parole because it required admitting guilt. But the oldest of the group, Corey Wise, served time as an adult. In his 13th year in prison, Wise had a chance encounter with another inmate that would change the lives of all the men convicted of the rape.
The resolution of this whole tragedy came from something that I don't believe is happenstance. It's a coincidence that borders on miracle.
Matias Reyes spotted Wise in a prison yard.
So just talking to me. Wow, you still here after all these years? I guess so.
They'd met years before, and he began to feel guilty that Wise was still in prison for a crime Reyes had committed.
He saw Corey and was like, he's still here? I gotta tell the truth.
Reyes confessed that he alone committed the rape, offering details about the crime that only the assailant would know. His DNA was a match, and the men were exonerated. The city of New York eventually agreed to a $41 million settlement, about $1 million for each year of imprisonment. Did the money make it better?
We were able to relocate, put our children in better situations. Besides that, no.
These 5 men, these 5 boys, when they were kids, they're men now. They were boys back then. They weren't fully grown. They still needed their families to depend on. Their parents were guiding them. I don't know, maybe they were out where they shouldn't be because, problems can happen out there, but they weren't doing anything wrong. Even if there were other children doing anything wrong, they were targeted because they were Black and Latino. Easy targets. The police did a horrific job. Now, this woman, if you research, if you watched about this documentary on Netflix, she was brutalized. She was hurt, and she deserved to have somebody brought to justice for this crime. She can't remember what happened. She had trouble walking. She was brutalized. But the police didn't do their job. They did what was political for them, to get somebody to blame. They took away some of the childhood years of these men. They've traumatized them, so this is carried with them for the rest of their lives. And I'm sure they're doing their best not to carry on with their children, but we carry trauma, and they've got this trauma for the rest of their lives. They were put in American prisons, which is brutal. The prison guards, some of them were just horrible and allowed them to be beaten up, actually for some of their own gain. There were some good guards, but there were so many that were not. Prison was a horrific place to be. This is not about rehabilitating people. This is about torture. That's what our system does. We need prisons in this country, but they should be for what they should be, and that is to rehabilitate people, to help people live a better life. And hopefully fit back into society. Now, if you've got somebody who's a serial killer like Jeffrey Dahmer, I don't believe in dehumanizing the man, but he doesn't. He didn't belong. He's murdered, but he doesn't belong back on the streets. He should have remained in prison because he needs to protect people. Something was really wrong with the man. But it doesn't make us better when we dehumanize somebody. In fact, the way we want revenge, the way we treat it, we in some ways are no better than the criminals. In fact, we create these criminals by the way we treat people in the society. We dehumanize them, we degrade them, we keep them at low points, especially minorities. We keep them in segregated neighborhoods, even if the law has changed. The conditions about denying public transit, not being able to support public transit, or don't care about increasing budgets when they're necessary to make it work. This is all ways to keep people into segregated communities. This happens in many places in our country. Doing everything you can to keep people stuck in situations, keeping wages down. So mothers have to work on 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. They're not watching over the children. The children get into trouble because they don't have the guidance. The father may be in prison because he was caught up in it, and it would mean that the children be caught up in it. And it's all for the benefit of corporations. And we're going to talk about this more, like I said, as we go on. I'm going to show you another clip of a really disgusting man who has gone just too far. But this man wanted these teenagers dead. He wanted them dead. He thought he'd bring back the death penalty and get rid of them. But then again, he is a racist man. The problem is, he's still here. In fact, he's more powerful than ever. But he's backed by white Christian nationalism. And this man is Donald Trump.
Maybe hate is what we need if we're going to get something done.
I felt like they might take us to the back of the precinct and kill us.
This is a hugely important story. I wish I could tell you it was unique, that 5 Black and Hispanic boys were arrested for a crime they didn't do and sent away for a crime they didn't do. But unfortunately, it's all too common in the United States. And so the Central Park 5 has to be emblematic for a lot of other people whose stories aren't told.
Watching things like this really turned my stomach. But it's needed. We have to talk about these things. They don't get better because we don't talk about them. In fact, they get worse and they repeat themselves because people are unaware of what things happen. Some people just don't care. I'm hoping, especially if you're a white person watching this, I'm hoping that you'll care. That being made aware of these things will help you to start thinking that you are not alone in this world. And that this idea of race, again, there's only one race, the human race. And see, we live in a society that wants us to think about only ourselves. And when we don't care how other people are treated, somehow it comes home and we get treated badly too. Maybe not the same way, but in some other way. Racism is not good for any of us. It's not good for the person who is suffering from racism. It's not good for the person who induces it, because we are not meant to be racist, hateful people. Now, many people choose not to follow God, and so that's part of it. But we are meant to be God's children, all of us. And even if you don't want to follow God, I hope that you can see that there's no point in hurting other people, because we are all human beings. And we need to look out for each other and care for each other. Until the next time, on American Christian or Christian American, God bless.